the doing world and the being world do not actually go eye to eye because they're radically different worlds. When you're on a highway, you have all these exits you can take to get off the highway whenever you want in the doing world. You can go see your friends, you can get on your phone, you can go do this and do that. The being world, there's no exits. You're just being.
Welcome to the Stay Grounded podcast. I'm your host, Raj Jana, founder of Liberate, and it's my mission to help you become the most grounded, loving, and authentic version of yourself that you can be. Each week, I interview experts in the fields of mindset, spirituality, and emotional well-being. My brilliant guests share their tools, stories, and unique perspectives to help you develop the skills you need to show up fully for the people and things that matter most in your life. Now let's dive in.
Hey guys, welcome to the first official Raj episode of 2024, a recap of 10 days sitting in silence. This experience was one of the most profound and transformative experiences of my life. And I did my best to capture it in words, but truly it was hard. It was hard to capture the depth and the magnitude of what you can actually experience when you shut off the world, when you're not looking at other people, when you're not sourcing your comfort from something external, and when you really push beyond your limits to access your being, your depths, like what's actually possible. And this episode was filled with a lot of insight, a lot of lessons, a lot of perspective, and it kind of combined my annual reflection into it. Like I have obviously had a lot of time to sit and think and reflect and look at every part of my life, and really for the first time kind of zoom out to a level that was so inspiring and empowering for myself to know that that type of clarity is possible when you just step back, zoom out, let go, allow, whatever word we want to use, but it's that skill set of just expanding beyond what's in front of you and becoming the witness. And so we talk a lot about that on this week's episode. Like I said, I did my best to capture the magic that it was, and there's so much that I just couldn't share because what you hear in the silence is truly, it can't be shared because it's not of words. It's a felt, embodied experience, and it's one that I will hold very near and dear to my heart, and something I've been meditating daily, almost an hour or two a day, and I likely will continue this practice of creating space for the silence and allowing the silence to really guide my life. I love you guys. I hope you enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or any of the podcast apps. We're going to be making a few format changes to the show this year, which means more episodes, more sporadic, inspired episodes, as opposed to just being, on Mondays or Tuesdays or whenever we decide to release them. My intention is to create a more, less, not as much of a, you're still going to get the weekly episodes, but create more flow with me. So you guys are really growing and learning and getting insights as they come through me. So to get the latest episodes, make sure you're subscribed. And I love you guys. Enjoy my reflections from truly sitting for 10 days in the depths of my silence. Enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special episode of Stay Grounded, the first episode of 2024, or second episode of 2024, but first with me and Georgina. Welcome back, Georgina.
Hey Raj, great to be here. Very excited about this one because last time we spoke, you were about to embark on a unique adventure. So I'm excited to hear more about that and all the other stuff that's been happening. So over to you.
I mean, to be honest, that it took up everything. It was 10 days in silence, 10 days with, no eye contact with others, no speaking.
No eye contact either.
No eye contact, no speaking, um, no journal, but I cheated. I had my journal with me. I didn't journal like I normally do, which I will be speaking about. Like I just wrote down little notes here and there, and I'll share actually, there's a lot to share about that whole thing I realized about myself with journaling and reflection and everything. Um, yeah, no, you're not supposed to have a journal. You're not supposed to, no phone, no internet, no nothing, no exercise, no coping. Basically, it was being. So no doing, no activity, no nothing to, it was just being. And that was so radically different than anything I've ever done in personal development. Like, most of personal development, even this concept of doing the inner work is that it's a doing. And most of the things we do to cope or soothe our emotions have the word doing in it. I'm going to do breath work. I'm going to do a meditation. I'm going to do this. And that was what was most profound for me was going from this nature of doing and being able to observe how much of a doer I am. Like
Mhm.
I'm naturally just such a doer to be forced into being and to watch how resistant I was and to literally witness my mind going absolutely crazy and be in so much discomfort at being and in the being to observe all of my scripts and all of my fears and all of my anxieties and all of my beliefs and all of my everything that I was kind of hiding from under this notion of doing. Like because I'm doing, I can't actually access those depths. And so to remove everything and just to sit in silence with myself was so illuminating and so profound. I'm truly in a state of awe at the brilliance of the technology of silence, like it is in stillness and slowness. Like there's like the void. It's a there's a profound level of technology that exists in that I just hadn't given credit to or thought to. And yeah, I'm still integrating. It's been a week since I got back. I actually moved and we were supposed to record this episode a few days ago, and I moved it because I was realizing how quickly I was trying to get back into doing. And there's just a nature of being that I am still integrating and wanting to come back to. And, uh, and yeah, so I don't know if we want to probe that or, kind of guide that, but that was the higher art. That was the big idea is just going from doing, which is a function of them. And you can take aligned action, right? Which is a function of action being aligned with deep being, deep listening, like deep silence, deep connection. And then there's activity, which is like doing for the sake of doing because I can't sit still. And just being able to have the distinction between the two is really valuable for me.
I'm really curious to know how you spent the day. So you mentioned sitting, but you mentioned no eye contact. So what are the dynamics inside this space where I'm imagining there's other people, but you can't connect with them?
Yeah, so
And
I didn't go to an official Vipassana, which is the 10-day Dhamma.org. I went to a Vipassana held at an eco village here in Costa Rica, and the community's been hosting silence retreats for 25 years. So they've built a culture of silence at their eco village. And, started out with 8 hours of meditation a day for 3 days. And this was practicing the Vipassana technique, which is a body scan technique. So you start at the top of your head and you basically scan all the way down to your feet and all the way back up. And that's basically what you're doing all the entire time. You're not looking at everything. And obviously, if you lose train of thought, you go into thought, like you come back. You come back to your breath. You come back to your scan. And I like to think of that as like meditation versus like contemplation or reflection, right? Like I used to confuse the two, to be honest. Like When I'd go sit in meditation, what I was actually doing was problem solving and doing.
Right.
So it's like, I'm going to go sit and I'm going to go meditate on this. Okay. Like
Uh-huh.
what I was actually doing with meditation was sitting down and being productive. But what I learned in this process was meditation is actually no goal, no nothing. You're just sitting and you're literally just being with your consciousness without attachment. And that was incredibly confronting. I
Yeah, I
mean,
imagine.
sitting for so long, like the pain in my legs and not being able to find a comfortable sitting position and watching my mind literally not be comfortable, which then translated to my body not being comfortable. And it was amazing to see my mind body connection. Like the mind and the body are so connected. When my mind was still, or when I was accessing a level of witness consciousness, which is me being beyond the ego and me being connected to the one that is watching my thoughts, watching the pain, watching everything. That was I could sit in the pain. In fact, pain was it was like an impermanent experience. Like just like every itch I had, it didn't last. Like I would have an itch, and in the beginning I would get up and I'd itch it. And then eventually I got to a point where I was like, I remember one of the facilitators being like, do not move. He was very stern. He's like, I don't care if you have an itch, watch it. And I remembered watching it, the itch would go away. And then it would show up in another part of my body. And I'd scan over there. The itch would go away. And then all of a sudden I'd get a pain in my leg. That pain would go away. And then I'd start having real pain because I was sitting for so long. But then I just kept coming back to my breath. And then I had to adjust and move. And, like there's the physical limitations that I had, which was I don't sit in that position for very long. And so but it was just the first 3 days were that boot camp in some ways. And then the last 7 days were a combination of satsangs, which is they had a village elder there who's, deeply profound. And we all had opportunities to submit questions to him about what we were experiencing in the silence. And he would channel answers. So we would meditate in the morning, we'd go to satsang, he'd channel and answers to collective questions, and then we'd go sit for hours. And then we'd come back in the evening and do that again. And then we'd go to bed and dream. We'd come back the next day. And that's basically what was happening. And that was really hard. The next 7 days were because the first 3 days, it's like boot camp. You just got to show up and just do the meditation, just show up and just push through it, Raj. And I have a pretty strong will, so I can make things happen. The last 7 days, it's like, oh, just do whatever you want. Just, you can't write, you can't read, you can't, like, they had all the, you can't masturbate, you can't do anything that one would do when they are just sitting by themselves and just bored. Like, they just said, sit. And it was fascinating because then I started seeing how I couldn't wait to go eat because eating was doing. And then I could observe the way I was eating. It was just so crazy, like to watch me be so uncomfortable in the stillness and the silence. And that's, one of the biggest takeaways was I just got a chance to look at every part of my life, every habit. And I got to look at specifically my journaling habit and one thing I'm really excited about in 2024 is kind of evolving my reflection process and subsequently my reflection episodes. One of the big ahas I realized was reflection is my best coping tool I've got. Like when I'm anxious, when I don't know what's happening, when I feel a lack of control, I come back to my reflection. I come back to my journal. I review my month. I see where I'm at, and it helps me make sense of life. But the only reason I need that tool is because I have an inherent distrust. Because if I trusted life fully, if I trusted in presence fully, would I need to remember or jot down all the lessons? Would I need to remember and jot down everything? No, I can't forget what I know. And I realized my mind was in reflection in my journaling process. I mean, you guys haven't seen my journaling process, guys. It's fucking fanatic. I mean, I'm tracking everything, every thought, every sensation, every belief, every story. Like I've got I mean, my books when I decide to write books are going to be epic because I can get back to the very, very, very moments. And there's value in that. I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater here. There's value in having this profound level of reflection. But what I realized I was missing was deep presence and faith. What if I don't write this insight down right after I got it? Would I remember it? That was my biggest fear in Vipassana. And that's why I cheated. Like I realized like my next Vipassana that I'll do, I do feel like I'll do this medicine, this technology again, because I think there's deeper layers I can get to, this being one of them. Like me not journaling for 3 days was hell on earth. It was just so, because I was so scared of not remembering all this amazing insight that I wanted to share with the world. Why do I feel that? Well, one, Raj, there was because I didn't trust myself. So there's a belief there. I don't trust myself to remember. And then there's another belief that like there's just so many beliefs tied up in this activity. And so I'm shifting my reflection process right now from it being so structured to it being more channeled. Like a
What does
big
that
less, it means, so like my journal, like I used to use a planner to track all my thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I'm not using it anymore. I'm coming to a journal with just blank paper, and I could write down things I need to do on that blank paper. I can draw on that blank paper. I can start to journal on that blank paper. I can do not, but it's like, it's not structured. I am actually coming back to more presence and flow and trusting that, coming back to a more connected state of if I'm meant to know it, I will know it and I can't forget it. And I don't need to remember what I need to do for the next week. I can actually trust that if I just sit in meditation every morning, the thing I need to do will come through. And I've been operating that way for the last week and it's been great. I haven't needed to remember all the things I need to do because life has a weird way of reminding me exactly what I need to do. And I've designed my life to allow for that level of flow now because I have team members and colleagues and accountability checks in place. I've built systems around me, but it allows me to be more present. And that's really what I'm stepping more into. And that's what I'm hoping the reflection episodes can become. You know, instead of it just being one long reflection episode every single month, I'm hoping it can be more like mini reflections as I get them and just releasing those episodes, you know, as they come through. Or, you know, just being more in flow with what wants to be shared as opposed to it being this like big, giant, jam packed, meaty episode with millions of takeaways. Um, and so that's been a big shift for me. And really, I think the biggest takeaway from that was like, I cannot forget what I know. I will always remember it because I know it. And me trying to journal so much was coming from that place of fear of me forgetting. And I'm
Mhm.
really stepping into more faith and trust in 2024. It's really that's been my North Star. How can I surrender control more and more and more in my life and come back into deep presence?
I find that fascinating that a key aspect of who you are and how you spent your time was actually like this disguised coping strategy, which is built around fear, even though that wasn't the story that was initially driving it. I find that that's really interesting, and how when you get that insight, you can then lay that down and experience a different way of living. So I'd love to ask you, unless you have something to say now. Okay, what I want to ask you is, it feels that you've gone through this phase in your life which has been very structured, very fine for performance and productivity and no rapid growth and all this good stuff, this personal development phase, let's say. And you went to this silent retreat where you recognized that the act of doing was shielding this experience of being. So my question to you is, what have you learned about what it means to be human now that you have this different insight into the balance between being and doing?
Great question. I mean, doing is a natural part of life, right? Like, I think there was a discourse in the middle. So this eco village that I was at was built on the foundations of teachings from Osho, which was a guru in India who has a pretty controversial sort of reputation. Put the controversy aside, he was a mystic and he gave a lot of channel talks in India around different elements of being and doing. And I think on like day 6 of the retreat, in one of the satsangs, they played one of his discourses, which was the idea of action versus activity. And I
Mhm.
think that really captures what I think personal growth for me is growing into, which is, when I think of activity, activity is this kind of frenetic nature of doing something. Action is actually just a response to what's in front of you. It's not necessarily that I want to live a life of not doing. I don't want to go to the mountains and just be in kumbaya and, just be all day and just sit in my nothingness and just meditate for 8 hours a day. Like that's not in my eyes a growth fueled life because you're bypassing the human experience, right? Like to me, true spirituality is integrating being with doing and being able to find that balance. But doing without being is activity because
Mhm.
and he said it beautifully. I'm probably going to butcher this, but in his words, he really said, like, let's say you're trying to access a deep state of relaxation, which is ultimately, what we're all trying to access with like mental health. Let's say mental and emotional well-being. It's like I want to get to that state of peace, enlightenment, all these whatever words we want to call it, right? That state of being that transcends this human realm where you feel so connected, so in alignment. I would say that is a goal that we all have in some way, shape, or form. We may not say that's our life mission, but it's like we all have this yearning to experience more peace. And he had this beautiful perspective of, okay, like let's say you feel stressed, right? And then you go and do a workout to feel less stressed. Well, here's the thing. You're literally doing something to solve your overactive doing. Like you can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. So if you do an action in order to solve something, you are still doing. So you'll never actually get to that deep state of relaxation. In order to truly get to that state of relaxation, you have to do the opposite, which is be, which is to
'Cause
sit.
And what does that achieve? That like so say you're feeling stressed and you decide not to go and do the workout and you just sit with it.
Yeah.
How does that change the experience like in the moment and also in the longer term?
In my eyes, it makes the noises louder, but that's when the real work begins. This is what I realized. I mean, like sitting for 10 days in Vipassana, like, man, I was exposed to I mean, and I went in with this intention, right? Like I wanted to go in and I wanted to understand why I was reaching for fruit and cravings, why I was engaging in intimate relationships the ways that I was, why I was having the challenges in my work life in the ways that I was. I went in to ask myself some big questions. And in the past, what I've done is taken a plant medicine or gone to a coaching session in order to get the insight. But doing nothing brought more clarity than anything I've ever done in my life because I can't hide. And so I'm not saying that this path is for everybody. I'm not saying this path of being is for everybody. I think what I'm seeing more clearly right now for myself and my understanding of what it means to be human, right? Like human beings, it's not about choosing any one experience. It's buying the whole curve, right? Like if you just constantly optimize your life for bliss, which is what I was doing with my reflection process. My reflection process was how do I live the most extraordinary, fulfilling life possible? I was optimizing for bliss. But in the act of optimizing for bliss, I still had something that was left unfulfilled that was driving all of my behavior. And so I think to be the human piece is like doing the exercise so that you can not have an experience of anxiety or depression is actually walking away from looking at and being with the depths of anxiety and depression and embracing that experience for what it is. Like, and I'll preface this. There was a part of me that didn't want to actually release an episode on Vipassana,
Mhm.
on my experience, because it is incredibly hard to articulate something as profound as what I experienced.
Mhm.
And I do my best because I'm a podcaster and I have a very articulate way of explaining things. And so I wanted to give this a shot. But even me, I am limited in being able to explain what I mean by being.
Sure.
Like being, to truly experience it's not a thing of words. It's there that to experience that nothingness, that the stillness, the presence, the ocean that sits in the being.
Mhm.
Like I'm having a hard time explaining it. And this is what I'm note. I mean, I was just shown that there is a quality and a depth to being that allows a profound level of clarity around why you are taking certain actions in your life. And the answers I'm seeking are not in doing. The answers
Mm.
I'm actually seeking are in the being. And in the being, from that state of depth, when I act, there's a profound level of alignment with the universe, with others, with like there's no, I'm not manifesting anything, I'm creating alongside everything. And that to me is, I think, how we, that to me is the great human experience. I was creating a lot of suffering by believing I had to do everything and I had to do everything on my own. And there was a lot of scripts around my enoughness and my worthiness. And even me, who has done, quote unquote, done so much of the inner work, that's it. I was able to only access a certain level of completion because I'm doing something to get rid of my doing nature. But in that being, there was such a depth of techno. It's like so crazy. Like I literally would sit there in the being and watch my mind go absolutely fucking crazy. It's like, why aren't you? I mean, I did this over Christmas, and like this is one of the first Christmases that I've missed with my family. It's like at least I've been able to call them or text them or wish them or like something. I've been able to stay connected to them. This is the first time I was disconnected. And then the voices came up like, God, you're a piece of crap. Like there are people out there who don't have families, and you have a loving family that celebrates Christmas and did it all these voices. And then it was like, Raj, like you have this responsibilities to this company and you're letting it down right now by being. And I got to sit. And those voices are so convincing. And those voices are so convincing. And in any situation that I wasn't forced to sit, I probably would have just listened and bought the plane ticket and gone and spent it with my family. But that's again, doing something to soothe the feeling. But to me, the most profound medicine was sitting with that
Mm.
and questioning those scripts. And when I question those scripts, zoom out, right? That's the skill set I feel like I really learned to cultivate is okay, there's this thing that's happening in front of me. Can I zoom out and watch the mechanism for what it is? Watch my mind for what it is. Access a greater level of consciousness to witness my ego and everything it's fighting for. And and can I not do anything to change the ego? Because you can't. The more you try to fight the ego with fighting, the more like it's like don't think about a dancing monkey. You're gonna think about the dancing monkey. The monkey's gonna dance more. the way you stop it from doing that is just letting go. And that is the ultimate practice of, life and spirituality and surrender. And that's the game, right? Of letting go and allowing alchemy to happen as you let go into the nothingness and allow then being to again, I cannot explain being. It's like you asked, what does it mean to be a human being with doing in the being? I had a long-winded answer. I'm having a hard time answering that question.
Well, what I've taken from what you've just been exploring there, which is actually really insightful for me, for myself, is that when we experience these moments of stress or anxiety or challenge, and we often turn to external strategies for processing or coping. So, like journaling, that's another thing for me. Writing is what I would do, or talking, that kind of thing. So, it's always an external process. But what I'm hearing you say is that the beingness has a technology too. And in the beingness, there's a way to process without externalizing it. There's a way to process by just being with it. And you can move through it probably in a deep way because you're accessing this other level of consciousness. You're not like journaling with your mind and thinking it through with your mind, you're transcending your mind. And then somehow the experience that you were grappling with that you would normally take externally dissipates and changes. Like that. It's like, well, I'm really interested in that. That sounds really.
The best way I was able to explain it to a friend of mine who asked me, what the experience was like was it's almost like I got to be the witness to my consciousness working with my ego. And it's like my ego is on an operating table and my consciousness was pulling out all these different tools depending on how the ego was moving and how the ego was performing. And it was pulling out insights and it was pulling out it was pulling out tools and philosophies and perspectives. But at the end of the day, it was just awareness. Because once I got the aha, then I could let go.
So,
That
for
that
example,
those
let's go back
ahas.
to
Yeah.
what you were saying about your family. Oh, I can't go and stay with my family. Like, what was the insight from that? How did you transcend that to find peace with it?
Well, so the insight for me there was remembering why I chose to do this. And the what I got to see in that moment was, wow, Raj, like you are so resistant to being by yourself right now. And I got to see my mind for what it was. It was like, you know how many people in the world, right? In fact, the big aha I got was like, you know, there are people in the world right now that can't even go to sleep without thinking that there's something that their lives are in jeopardy right now. And here you are complaining about the fact that you get to sit in peaceful stillness.
That's a perspective shift if ever there was one.
And it slapped me out of it. I was like, dude, you chose to be here. No more victim, no more complaining. Sit and embrace this because I don't know how many opportunities in your life you're going to get to sit by yourself for 10 days. When you're a father, when you have kids, when you company grows, like, I don't know. But right now you have an opportunity. Do not run. And that then became the intention to just not run and to access courage and to zoom out, which I think is the zooming out is the technology of consciousness. It's the ability to zoom out on demand, and it's mindfulness. And there's different layers of mindfulness, but I think zooming out is where there's you're like a spiritual scientist in some ways, where you've got like a magnifying glass on what's happening and you're just going higher and higher. And these different insights and perspectives help you go higher and higher. And you just get better at that. It was truly like a marathon for my mind. And one of the most profound gifts I think I've ever given myself. If I really had to, like on day 10, I was so sad. I actually wanted to just continue sitting. To finally broke into a level of my being that was Really special. Really, really, really special. Um,
And what was the experience like to get that kind of quality of insight just through yourself, not through writing, not through conversation, not through plant medicine, for example?
well, it's a paradigm shifter. It's changed. Like this was as big of a paradigm shifter for me as my first plant medicine experience. Like, I mean, I remember that one, I felt like I put on colorblind glasses and I could see color for the first time. Like, this has completely shifted the way that I think about growth. I don't have to do growth so much. I can just allow and be present and trust and sit with the experience and recognize that I'm buying all of the experiences in my life. I'm not optimizing for any one goal. I'm buying the whole curve. I'm
What do you
buying
mean?
the, I'm buying the beautiful experiences and I'm also buying the heartbreaks. I'm buying the incredible, ecstatic, joyful moments and I'm also buying the depths of grief and sadness. I'm not choose like it's like by fixating on an outcome. Don't get me wrong, I have a vision for my life and I want to create that vision, not manifest difference. I want to create that vision. And I can feel the vision in every bone in my body. I can feel the direction of my life. And I just feel like I'm surfing a wave right now versus me being like, this is what I want. This is how it has to look. I'm a spiritual badass. I can make anything happen. This is my prayer. I can do it. And I feel this expansion into a deeper layer of no, like I'm not, I think I talked about this on a podcast a while ago, but like I'm not the thermostat that can set the temperature of the room. That was one way of manifesting. I think I'm more of the weather. Like I'm all the seasons. And I'm and I'm fully present in all the seasons and I'm choosing to be grateful for everything. And I think from that state, there's a different way of moving in my life that I'm inviting in. I feel a different frequency of thank you. Like there's a different prayer, a deeper prayer, a more profound, connected prayer that is that is more collaborative. I really was sitting with my 2023 reflection. I did my annual reflection, and while I was sitting, I didn't follow the same framework that I normally do, which is very structured and very like look at each month. And because I got to do that, I got to literally zoom out of every month and just come back. And I didn't have my notes, but I remembered. I remembered what
Sure.
I was supposed to remember.
Yeah.
I remembered what I was feeling when Gina and I were going through our challenging moments. I remembered my ayahuasca ceremony and the insights from there. I remembered, the profound levels of challenges that I was going through, just really being with myself and learning to access my aloneness, which was, I think, the theme of 2023. It was going from this kind of codependent nature of living, which was being reliant on my business partners or being reliant on my intimate partner or being reliant on my friends, but like coming back to trusting that I've got me and trusting that if I fall back, God or higher power or spirits got me. And I thought I was doing a great job until I sat with myself for 10 days and I got to really experience my aloneness, which is different than loneliness, right? Loneliness is this story of you not being enough or you not having enough or you not, but aloneness is a beautiful thing. Aloneness is a gift to just be in total connection and gratitude and love for just that part of you that just is not alone actually. There's a connectedness and it's profound and it's blissful. And to get there has been beautiful. Has been really beautiful. It's really shifted, I believe, the way that I want to live my 2024. I don't want to be alone. I am not alone. I've accessed that aloneness within me now, and now that gives me more trust in collaborating with others and inviting love back into my life. And like being more open to connection and trusting that I don't have to create anything. I don't have to manifest anything. I don't have to manifest my dream relationship. I don't have to manifest my dream business. I can just be in a state of gratitude and thank you and just be present and continue trusting that like I just have this deeper layer of trust and that feels really good. Feels really good to be playing from there right now and entering into a new year with that. Um, yeah, it feels
I
like a
think
gift.
what's interesting as well is hearing you speak now. Obviously, we speak a lot, and I notice those subtle shifts in you. And there's something that's much more grounded than I've heard before. And it's interesting how we come back to similar themes like you've spoken about trust in the universe so many times. And it's like, no, I know it now, I understand it now. And then again, that cycle comes back round. It's like there's a whole level, a whole new level of depth and insight into what that concept actually means,
Well,
which is remarkable. It's beautiful to hear.
well, and when I before I went into Vipassana or those 10 days of silence, I kind of mentioned like I feel like the edge I've been sitting at with my growth was my my physiological addictions, my chemical addictions, right? Like my phone. I was glued to my phone. I loved scrolling on Instagram. I loved looking at things. I loved checking my email. I loved doing all these things. And I noticed how many times a day I was doing that.
Yeah, it's scary, right? Even if you think you're not very addicted, you're like, if you actually sit down and count them, like, what?
No, that's what I'm
How-
saying. Like,
how-
and so I knew that there was a depth of being that I was afraid to access.
There's a depth of being you're afraid to access.
My mind, my ego was afraid to get to because I think I knew if I just pulled away everything, if you pull away everything, if you pull away your comfort foods, if you pull away your comfort distractions, if you pull away your self pleasure practices, if you pull away everything that you go to feel good, and you sit in the totality of your being, like,
So what do you think you were afraid of? Because I can totally relate to that.
well,
Like,
that's your ego. Your ego is your ego. It's letting go of control.
letting go of control.
Yeah, it's letting go of the need to do. It's letting go of control. That's what your ego finds safety in control, in knowing, in certainty, and it creates stories
Mm.
around. That's why manifesting so hard for me because it's like I'm fixated on this thing, and I'm gonna will my way into making it happen because the opposite is unbearable to experience. And don't get me wrong, I've manifested some pretty epic stuff in my life, and I'm a fantastic manifester. When I want to be, I can turn it on. I can make shit happen. There's no doubt about it. And I am stepping into a new wave of being that I think has more fruits to bear than me staying in that state of ego of, and I think there's a new level of confidence I can access by actually being okay with everything happening, which is the thing I want coming true and the thing I don't want coming true. And trusting that it's all part of it because in that trust you are actually alchemizing the ego. Like the ego is you're literally rewiring your ego with every let go, with every surrender, with every allow, with every fall back and let yourself be held. You're literally rewiring your ego to be in more congruence and alignment with life. And I am of the belief that life is benevolent. I am of the belief that life has a lot of beauty. And even in those challenging moments, there's depths of being like they're all we're all calling in these experiences for reasons, and I do feel um it's funny like, what's his name Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He speaks about this, right? Like even in and that's why that book was so powerful because even in Auschwitz, even in the depths of his suffering, he was able to find meaning. And that to me is, I think, what I'm leaning more into with this depth of being and playing that spiritual game, or living life through that spiritual lens, which has a deeper tone to it that isn't so attached. I'm not saying desires are wrong. I love having desires. I love having all that. And I think they're important things to cultivate and have a vision for your life. But having a strong desire for something with a non-attachment for how it shows up, that to me, I think is the sweet spot. And a desire can be a mission. It can be a yearning. It can be, I think there's a really beautiful frequency that you can live with by being super, like I said, just not fixated and not, uh, I know I kind of jumped around your question, but to me that the ego wants to fixate on an outcome, on a goal, because it likes having endpoints. It likes knowing there's a safety in it. And what I learned to do was to question, why is that so safe? Like, why is uncertainty unsafe when uncertainty is the only constant? Why is the darkness so afraid when it's like, I remember years ago, I was working with a practitioner who shared this insight with me around every piece of sound, there's infinite silence. Around everything that's bright, there's infinite darkness. Around everything that moves, there's infinite stillness. Around everything that's certain, there's infinite uncertainty. Why are we accessing the depths of our safety from what we can see, what we can touch, what we can know versus the opposite? Why aren't we accessing our safety from the infinite? And that's more of a question for each person. It's not necessarily it's something to contemplate on, because it's a great question. When uncertainty is the only thing is that only thing that we can guarantee, why are we so fixated on building a life of certainty? Doesn't that feel like the more unsafe thing to do than to be okay with all the ranges? Not to, be a Debbie Downer and to anticipate terrible things happening all the time and go back into the mind and be a planner, which is again, you trying to create some level of control.
Mhm.
But to let go and be in the medicine of that, to me, is a question more than anything. And all I have are great questions. I don't necessarily have answers. I don't really have wisdom. I don't think I'm like this. I have clear questions that I'm asking myself. I think I've accessed clarity around things I'm observing in my life, and I share those things here. But so to me, it is sitting in the question of, why do you personally want to cling on to control? Why do you like to, like, what and where's that coming from? Not to say that planning's bad, but to sit in curiosity, I think, is a valuable exercise for everybody who wants to live a more whole life, one that's in more flow with life and creation as it is.
Yeah, I love that question. And I think it's a great opportunity as well as reflecting on like your individual experience. It's a great place to reflect on our collective experience as well, and look at how the social structures we live in like drive us to try to create that kind of safety. Because it's fascinating, right? When you've got that opportunity to step outside it, we actually want very different things to what potentially we're told to chase and have some.
The elder at the retreat had a really beautiful way of putting at it. He's like, you know, the doing world and the being world do not actually go eye to eye, because they're radically different worlds.
Mhm.
And normally when you're on a highway, you have all these exits you can take. to get off the highway whenever you want in the doing world. You go see your friends, you can get on your phone, you can go do this and do that. The being world, there's no exits. You're just being. It's claustrophobic in some ways for the doing mind. And that was really insightful for me to even set that frame. You know, that you're right, the world is created. This was the biggest insight I got when I did my first plant medicine ceremony. I remember coming out of it and my heart was blasted open. And I came back to my life. And I think this is why integration is so hard. Like when I think of what is integration, integration is taking the insights and the ahas you get from, you know, altered states experiences and bringing them home.
Yeah.
And creating a life where you are living with those. And then eventually you create a life where you don't even need altered states experiences. You don't need medicine. You don't need any of it because your life is just integrated. Like you have all the insights integrated. I remember one of the first insights one of the most painful things I was shown after my first medicine journey was that, my gosh, like I built a life from my mind, not my heart. My heart wants very different things than what my mind wants. And my mind is terrified of what my heart wants. But courage is in the heart. And over the years, that was what, 5 years ago? I think 2019 is when I had my first journey. I slowly practiced courage. My integration has been courage. Do I have the courage to listen to my heart? I have the courage to fly in that direction. I have the courage to surrender. And just new levels of the game. It's all new levels, right? Like I was already very aware before I went into Vipassana, and I'm a little more aware now. And there
Yeah.
are infinite levels to this. I am not ever going to reach the end of this because consciousness is expanding at all times. It's constantly growing, and I will never reach the end. It's the goal. That's the thing. There's no goal. The only thing that's true is what's present in here and now. And if we can integrate that concept into our lives, I think there's opportunity for a lot more joy, fulfillment, mysticism, connection, flow, creation, expansion, collaboration, which I think are values of this new world, right? Like years ago, you know this, like I wrote a vision on my website. I talked about values of a new world, the values of being, not doing, right? What are the 5 values of being? And I think it was like, I think I had 8, maybe 5 or 8. I don't know. It was like connection, compassion, curiosity, courage, and confidence, creativity. Yeah, like those are the being values. Like when we optimize our life for more being, what ends up happening? And I think it takes us doing the work. And I have to even catch myself
Mm-hmm. Yes, I
doing the
guess what
work.
is the work? Because your experience from the silent retreat has basically said the work is in being, like when you
The work
be,
is in, that's the thing. The work is in not doing.
which society hates because we've been set up to be these productive beings inside a society
I mean,
that's
our
driven.
GDP, think about the one thing, how do you measure a country's success? It's the gross domestic product. How
Yeah,
much are we shipping?
yeah, capitalist metrics,
And don't get
which
me wrong, capitalism is a beautiful thing. I am a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. I don't think I don't think it's the system. It's got its perks, right? It's just I, I'm I'm sensing, and I've been sensing for a few years now, since I wrote that vision, that our souls are asking for a different way of existing.
absolutely
And
outside
we
of
are, and right now we are in a very important tipping point in our societies in every single domain, if you would call it that, where all the structures that were just built on doing are sort of being challenged. It's not working for people. And I think there's a lot, and the systems aren't going to go out without a fight because that's
Coming back to the ego, I'm sitting in a silent meditation. Even though my ego knows it's about to die, it wasn't going to go out without a fight. It was going to use every vile excuse. You're a piece of shit, son. Go spend time with your parents. God, you're a piece of shit CEO. Like, you're going to let your team just go out there and do, like, it's going to be vile. Can we allow it to die anyways?
Well, we have to. Otherwise,
But the thing is, the mind, the ego won't. This is the crazy part, and this is why it requires. This is why I believe that this type of work, this awakening work, is what matters most. I think every single leader in the world should be doing awakening work. I think it's important. I think this is why I believe this type of work is so important to leadership, because when leadership wakes up, it trickles down. But if they're not awake to their own greed, their own power dynamics, their own egos, you cannot make change. You just can't.
no, because it just perpetuates the system. And also there's that angle too about awareness from grassroots forcing change, because the more people that wake up and realize that the system has them trapped, and the priorities that our culture is pressing are actually not good for us,
No,
we're going to want different things.
you see it so clearly, like just coming back to nature. Like that was another beautiful thing of me being at the retreat center. It was just gorgeously covered in nature. And it's an eco
Yeah,
village. It was an
that's
eco village so that like I mean, it's like things like you're living one with nature. Like you're not it was the first time I had ever like you're not allowed to have plastic. Like there's no like it was like so beautiful for me to also not just be sitting in my beingness, but also unplug from the matrix and come back to living in harmony with nature and what that was doing to my psyche. Like I was like my nervous system was calming down in a way I don't think I've ever, and I think that's why I was able to go so deep. I think if I did a Vipassana in the city, I just don't
different.
know if I would have been able to get to that depth of being because there's something about coming back to your roots. You know, our technology is what, 20, 30 years old? Our nervous systems are 60,000 years old. So in the grand scheme of life, like, I think we really haven't lived with all of this technology very long. Um, so it's important to come back to the being in whatever way that is. And I think nature is a really great way. I mean, that's why I love being in Nosara. I love being in Costa Rica because it's easier for me to be here than it is for me to be in the States. As much as I love the States, it is so much easier for me to be and wake up and hear the monkeys and be with the birds and go jump in the ocean and eat clean food and walk a lot. And, I feel very privileged and grateful that I've chosen this place to call home. But it is, I think it's important. I think we all get to find our own version of being and stillness and silence. And yeah, and I'm excited. I'm excited for 2024. I'm excited that I get to show up this year with this level of awareness. And I'm excited for what's going to come as a result. It's a beautiful experience to wrap up the year and step into what's next.
What is next?
I think that was what closing out 2023, it was, can I be in my aloneness? I really love it. And now that I do, I am wanting more partnership, team, collaboration. I want to trust people more. I want to let go more in the realm of people. I think that's where my growth edge is. Like, can I just continue trusting people, allowing them in to support me in work, support me in intimacy? Can I truly see the beauty in people and allow myself to be held? And I think that's what I'm really looking forward to, stretching and being in slowness. Like I said, just the being. It's like I don't have to do everything on my own.
I can be in collaboration and partnership, and that feels really nourishing to my system and a bit of an edge because it's like, I don't know if I've ever really been surrendered in relationships. I think I've always had a bit of control or codependence, or I'm really looking at interdependent relationships now, not necessarily codependent, which is like it's a next layer. Like you have to go through this period of aloneness, I think, to get to that state of interdependence. And I'm really excited to play in that this year.
Amazing. Is there anything
Hmm.
else? What else is in your mind? Or what else is present?
No, I'm just excited, guys. You know, um, thank you all for being a part of this ride, and thank you for listening this far into the episode. And like I said, I am hoping that moving forward, we'll have more mini episodes as opposed to these long reflections. So you'll still be getting reflections, and you'll still be keeping up with me in my life, and you'll still be, you know, along for the ride. It's just, it'll be more consistent updates. So if you're not subscribed to the show on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube, go ahead and do that so you can just hear from me every time they drop in. And I also have an ask for you guys. If you haven't already left me a review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you choose to listen to the podcast, I would love to get one. I mean, I I know there's so many of you that listen all over the world, and I know you guys, I think sometimes maybe it's just a little more vulnerable to share, or but I would challenge you. Like I would love to hear from you because it really does give me so much joy to know how the podcast is like supporting you and loving you. So if you don't mind leaving a review or sending me a message on Instagram or sending me an email or whatever way you want to communicate with me, like I would just love to hear from you because it really would make my day. So I think that's it. That's all I got. Thank you, Georgina, again for holding loving space. I was a little nervous about this one because I did not know how to, again, communicate something as profound as what I accessed and experienced. And I still don't think I did a good job. There's layers to this that are still just pouring through me. But I hope this episode gave a little bit of insight into the mystery of being. Um, yeah. So,
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed hearing about your experiences and trying to put myself there to get a sense of what it was like. And I think you did. Exploring this notion of being was fascinating. So thank you.
great. Well, everybody, it's a wrap for this week's episode of Stay Grounded. I'm your host, Raj. This is your old friend, Georgina. And from us, stay grounded. We will chat very, very, very soon.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Stay Grounded. No matter where you're from or what you're going through, I hope it helps you remember just how incredible you are and have always been. If you're on a path of emotional healing or self-discovery and would like to learn how Liberate can support your journey, head to www.rajjana.com/liberate, that is LIBER8, to learn more about our current group programs and one-on-one offerings. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.